In 1941, something happened that German High Command tried to hide from the world. When the first captured T-34 was brought to Berlin for analysis, engineers from Krupp, Daimler-Benz, and Porsche gathered in a secret facility. What they discovered made them write an urgent letter directly to Adolf Hitler. The message was simple: we must copy this tank immediately or we will lose this war. But Hitler refused, and that decision cost Germany everything. June 22, 1941, Operation Barbarossa begins. 3 million German soldiers cross the Soviet border with absolute confidence. They have the best tanks in the world, Panzer III and Panzer IV. They crushed Poland in weeks. They humiliated France in days. The Soviet Union would fall in 6 weeks. At least, that was the plan. But within the first hours of combat, German tankers started sending strange reports back to headquarters. They were encountering a Soviet tank that didn't exist in any intelligence briefing, a tank that shouldn't have been possible. The reports were terrifying. Our shells bounce off like tennis balls. We hit it 12 times. It kept coming. We need to retreat. Our weapons are useless. German commanders thought their men were exaggerating. Surely the primitive Soviets couldn't build anything superior to German engineering. They were wrong.
The first major encounter happened near the town of Raseiniai in Lithuania. A single Soviet tank, later identified as a KV, the T-34's heavy brother, blocked an entire German division for 2 days. 2 full days. Thousands of soldiers, dozens of tanks, stopped by one machine. But the T-34 was even more dangerous. It was faster. It was everywhere. And German tankers quickly learned a horrible truth. Their standard 37mm anti-tank guns literally could not penetrate its armor. Soldiers gave these guns a nickname, the door knocker, because that's all they did: knock on the T-34's armor and announce their presence before being destroyed. One German officer wrote in his diary, "We fired at the Russian tank from 100 meters. Direct hit. The shell exploded. When the smoke cleared, the tank was still moving. The crew was laughing at us through the viewport. Laughing." By autumn 1941, German forces had captured several T-34s intact. These tanks were immediately shipped back to Germany for analysis. And this is where our story gets interesting. Engineers at the Kummersdorf testing ground took the T-34 apart piece by piece. What they found was revolutionary. First, the armor. It wasn't just thick, it was sloped. German tanks had flat armor plates. The T-34's armor was angled at 60 degrees. This meant that a shell hitting it had to travel through almost twice as much steel. Simple geometry, devastating effectiveness. Second, the gun. The T-34's 76mm cannon could destroy any German tank at ranges where German guns were useless. It was like bringing a rifle to a knife fight.
Third, the engine. A diesel V2 engine that was years ahead of German designs. More reliable, less likely to catch fire, easier to produce. The German engineers were professionals. They had no national pride to protect in their report. They wrote the truth. The T-34 was the best tank in the world. General Heinz Guderian, the father of German tank warfare, met with the engineers. He asked them one simple question: can we copy it? The answer was complicated. Yes, technically, Germany could copy the T-34, but there were problems. The aluminum for the engine was scarce. Germany was already running low on resources. The diesel engine would require retooling factories. The wide tracks, perfect for Russian mud and snow, would need new production lines. But the biggest problem was pride. German engineers couldn't accept that they should copy a primitive Soviet design. Instead, they proposed building a new tank, bigger, heavier, more complex, a tank that would be superior to the T-34 in every way. This tank would eventually become the Panther. It was indeed formidable, but it came 2 years too late.
was mechanically unreliable, and Germany could never build enough of them. One engineer, whose name was kept secret in the reports, wrote a personal letter to Hitler begging him to simply copy the T-34 directly, mass-produce it, win the war with Soviet design and German manufacturing. Hitler reportedly threw the letter in the trash. Copy the Slavic design? Admit Soviet superiority? Impossible. To understand why the T-34 was so special, you need to understand Soviet design philosophy. It was the opposite of German thinking. Germans built tanks like they built cars. Complex, precise, over-engineered. Every part was machined to perfection. This made their tanks excellent when they worked. But in the frozen mud of Russia, complexity was death.
Soviet engineers had different priorities. The T-34 was designed to be built by factory workers with minimal training. It was designed to be repaired in the field with basic tools. It was designed to be produced in massive numbers. Here's a number that shows the difference. In 1943, Germany produced about 6,000 tanks. The Soviet Union produced over 24,000, 4 times as many. And most of those Soviet tanks were T-34s. The T-34 wasn't perfect. Early models had terrible visibility. The two-man turret was cramped. The transmission was rough. But none of that mattered because there were always more T-34s coming. German tank ace Otto Carius, who destroyed over 150 enemy tanks, later wrote, "We could destroy 10 T-34s for every tank we lost, but they would send 11. By 1945, the T-34 had become the symbol of Soviet victory. Over 80,000 were built, more than any other tank in World War II. It fought from Moscow to Berlin, from the frozen north to the deserts of Mongolia. The German engineers were right in 1941. The T-34 was a war-winning weapon, and Hitler's refusal to take it seriously cost Germany the war. Some historians argue that the T-34 was the single most important weapon of World War II, not the atomic bomb, not the aircraft carrier. A Soviet tank designed by engineers who understood one simple truth. In war, quantity has a quality all its own. Today, T-34 monuments stand in hundreds of cities across Russia and Eastern Europe, a reminder of the tank that changed history. The tank that German engineers saw and knew the war was already lost.